Hey everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk Luxury. I'm your host, Alex Brandaw, a Nashville, Tennessee-based global luxury real estate specialist and someone who is endlessly curious about the people and stories behind refined experiences. On this show, we go beyond the surface, diving deep into the craft, culture, and character behind what luxury really means today.
Well, welcome back to Let's Talk Luxury. I've been looking forward to this one, y'all. I'm so glad to be here with one of our first truly international guests all the way from across the pond and in London. I'm thrilled to have you, friend. Thanks for being here.
It's an absolute pleasure. I'm looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit your background and how you came to be in luxury and luxury watches.
Yeah, okay. So first of all, my name's Giles. Not Schofield. Schofield is not part of my name. Americans actually often mispronounce it to Schofield, but it is in fact Schofield, and named after a Civil War revolver. So where does that fit in within the British watch industry is such that the watch was only ever meant to be for me. And I was going through a major Westerns phase at the time. I loved the Schofield model revolver. It's the bad boys revolver of choice. Jesse James used it. It's a top breaking model. And as a designer, I love the look of it. It's a super cool thing. And when my project for one watch became a commercial enterprise, I thought it'd be prudent to speak to Smith & Wesson just in case. And I couldn't get through, but 9 lawyers phoned me up within the week. It's a very scary experience. You don't want to mess with a gun company's lawyers. But they said in short that I could keep the name or I could keep the guns, but using both together could be risky on my front. So I dropped the guns because I had an image of 2 guns on my original case back of my first watch. So I dropped the guns, and actually that was a good thing because they had no place for a British watchmaker as my place within the industry kind of developed. And this really kind of tells you the story of how it began. My watch company began out of vanity. Solely, I wanted a nice watch. I couldn't afford a nice watch. So I thought it would be clever of me to make my own watch. And here I am actually nearly 20 years later. And of course, getting that first watch to market cost considerably more than the 2 or 3 watches that I dreamt of owning in the very first instance. So I wouldn't advise it actually to anybody because it's a dangerous game. But that's how I began my journey within the watch industry, just making one watch for myself. And the whole thing kind of got out of hand, deliberately out of hand, but it did get out of hand. And here we are, still doing the same thing.
So was there a moment where you were like, oh my gosh, like where you were on that acceleration curve where it got out of hand that you care to share? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember it very well because I was running a design agency in the background and I was out of my mind with boredom doing hundreds of websites for clients, company logos, and all that classic kind of graphic design stuff, of which I love, but I was bored. I had built my own amplifier, same story. I couldn't afford the amplifier. I love hi-fi. I couldn't afford the amplifier I wanted. So I built my own. And a project like that would take me a full year to do as a hobby. I'd learn everything there was to know about amplifiers and electronic engineering, of which I've retained none of that knowledge now, but ended up with the amplifier that I wanted that I couldn't afford, And no doubt it would have cost way less to go and buy the amplifier I coveted in the first place. So the watches became a similar pattern. And with me, I justify the hobby quite often by turning it into a justifiable business, right? And I've done the same with numerous things before. In fact, American instruments. I had a business restoring mandolins, banjos, and ukuleles for about 4 years. It was a hobby. It was really fun. I loved it. I had to knock it on the head because I was bringing up a young family and such a project couldn't sustain that. Hours in the shed, French polishing bowl back Italian mandolins was definitely a retirement hobby, I would say, rather than bringing up a young family. But the watches, I remember it well because I think it was a case of sunk cost bias and sunk time bias, meaning that I'd put so much effort into my project, years actually, to make sure that the watch, the original watch, which was called the Signalman, the original watch had to speak the language of watches. And going at watch design as a graphic designer is concerning because you tend to deal with trends in graphic design. There is a classical language, and certainly so of watches. We call this a register. And that classical register of watches I had to fully understand. And the litmus test for me was, would my watch look out of place in an airport duty-free cap, right? As you're walking by all the very familiar brands, would mine look out of place? I could not abide the fact that it would look engineered or homemade. And so what happened was, is I committed to the elements that you cannot make one off. So something like the dial and the hands, there are minimum order quantities that come with those because there are tooling charges to make those components. And so I had to commit, even if it was going to be one watch to me, to get it right, there would have been a lot of wasted components, right, if I had stuck with one watch. So in order to make it viable, I decided that I would turn it into a business. And I remember being on holiday with my wife and family and just saying, shall I do it? Shall we do it? Shall we do it? And it meant losing a day a week at my graphic design agency because I had to concentrate on this. And we decided we should go for it. And I remember it very well because, of course, it was a seminal moment in life. And that door has led me to where I am now. And I'm very glad I did do it because my life is very fulfilling as a designer because I get to design stuff for me. And that's an important point here because I only design for myself. And being that I'm a confident designer, and what I mean by that is I'm confident in my design work, not arrogantly so. I will listen, but I'm confident enough that if somebody says, can you design this? I'm confident I can do that. And so to design watches and stuff for me and nobody else means that I don't need to be a salesperson. I can just be enthusiastic, right? And that enthusiasm is what ultimately moves stuff on so that I can afford to make more stuff. And I'm just grateful that there's other people out there like me that like my stuff, right? And I didn't expect them to at all, actually.
But that's a true testament, and I would use a different. I mean, we're meeting for the first time and the pre-show and here today, but I would go actually with the craftsmanship, right? Like you're not only an entrepreneur, you've got that artisan craftsmanship with your, refinishing and all of that. Like it seems like what I call a tuning fork in your soul that you aligned with, right? That was just like, there it is. Like, and then it does allow you to do things that you love, but it doesn't feel like work, right? When you're aligned
Absolutely, Alex. Yeah, I mean, that is exactly right. And I tend to not get daunted by skills that I see other humans doing. I see them, say, doing some clever metal work or some finishing techniques. And I'm of the type of personality that just says, I can do that. I'll have a go at that. And I will afford the time to muck about in that way, to experiment and play. I know the virtues of that. I know that with that means that I get results that are not homogenous within the watch industry, right? And so my product ends up being different because I'm not doing the same stuff everybody else is doing. Right down to the kind of minute componentry. I don't do that. I don't use the same suppliers. I don't use the same box makers that other people do, the same badge makers. All of my suppliers are such that they've been curated, I suppose, to fit within my lifestyle, being as stress-free as possible, because it's incredibly stressful running a watch business, an independent watch business. And that's an important point for your listeners because I can't compete with Rolex and Omega and all the other high street brands. They have an enormous revenue, an enormous advertising budget. And to play them at their own game is an impossibility as a independent. So you have to think tangentially, right? You have to think in a way that means that my narrative is sincere and my product matches that narrative without it feeling like it's forced. And that's always been important to me, is the integrity of the business and that the story I'm telling is real, right? I'm not faking it. I'm not saying this is a proprietary material that was invented for, when it's not. It's off the shelf, And in some cases it isn't. In some cases it is proprietary, and I will talk about that and the narrative that goes with it. But there's no trickery with the brand, because I don't think I would have lasted 20 years in this industry if there was.
Well, there's no question, right? I mean, my experience with luxury experiences, but also, high net worth individuals, they're on high alert, for people that take away from them, and they're also on the high alert of like, is this real or not real, the fakeness of it. And because they're not that all of them have been taken advantage of, but they're worried about that, right? They're worried about their own brand, that if I'm a part of this or aligned with this, does this pull me down, or does this match and maintain or elevate? I think they're looking at that. And some people don't care. I mean, people are people, but I think in general, in my experience, when you're in houses, like I'll be showing houses to folks and you have other people putting on, and you can tell that they don't know. And I tell people that all the time in the luxury world, when you're not authentic and when you're not being your absolute best self and having integrity, clients will discover it, but there won't be a blow up. They'll just disappear. They'll just fade out of your life and you won't know why. Oh, you're like, okay, well, I don't really know what happened there, but it's because somewhere along the way you were going to hurt their image, their brand, their goals, etc.
Absolutely. And I think in the luxury space is something that is prevalent because there's money involved. And where there's money involved, people are trying to make it and get in on it. And I certainly didn't do it for that. I didn't come at it with that angle. I'm direct sales only because the margins on my products are terrifying from an accountancy point of view, meaning that I'm forced to do direct only. I have never done retail because I cannot, and also don't necessarily want to, make the volume in which would enable me to have the margins, which would therefore enable me to do retail. So I've never been down that road, and I'm not particularly interested in, because it would shake up my kind of working structure so badly for me that I'm not interested in at all. For me, I'm an introvert in the respect that most of my day is spent on my own doing design and working out the stories and the narrative and building the brand. And that's what I enjoy most. And I love it now as much as I did with the first watch that I mentioned, working on new projects and other bits and pieces that I'm interested in. Yeah, I don't want that to get upset for anything. And I think you're right. It is about the integrity and being sincere, and it's about absolutely doing your best. And the price of the product is not irrelevant to any of my customers, and it's not irrelevant to me, but it is secondary, the price of the product, to everything else that matters, like you were saying, like one's own brand, one's own personal image, and the story's sincerity. Is that enough for you to hang your coat on, right? To say this is worth £10,000, for example. And it's that I'm always working on, is that I'm not playing a game where the narrative does become stronger than the product itself, but there's a balance within the narrative, the product, and Schofield as a brand.
Speaking of, I've been reminding myself not to forget. You mentioned at the beginning there were a handful in your first run that had the guns on it when the attorneys called. Has that created those as a special division of collectibles? The number of those that were
it was never made, actually.
Oh, never made. Okay.
No, it was only a prototype phase. So I don't even have a single one of the case backs with the guns on. I did redraw them, funnily, recently, because I thought that could be quite interesting, just to see if I could put it on something that wasn't the watch necessarily. So something like a polishing cloth or some graphics. I would like to do a kind of, I don't know how to factor it in yet, but like a Wild West edition, because I do these short limited edition runs, of which I've done so many different themes and bits and pieces. And I would like, in a way, to be able to do something that does acknowledge the very genesis of the phase I was in at the beginning, interestingly. And actually, Major Schofield, who modified the Colt revolver back in the Civil War, I managed to find a contact a member of his family through, I think it's an American website called Find a Grave.
Yeah.
And somebody had left a message virtually, or a message on this Major Schofield's grave. I got in contact with the family and told them about what I was doing, and they gave me their blessing to continue with the project and to call it Schofield, even though, of course, it's a common surname. But at the same time, it just felt good to have that little nod from the family themselves.
Listen, I mean, here we are, transcontinentally connecting in 2025, and you were moved by something that literally happened across the world.
Yeah.
And the Civil War was literally fought right over
Yeah.
these rocks in my front yard.
Wow.
So I'm in my
Okay.
studio, and there was literally a battle. The third to last battle of the Civil War happened about a third of a mile away, and the retreat actually went down my street. And I have had multiple Civil War collectors come to my house, including various celebrities that are very much into it, and have pulled cartridges out where they were shot, and even musket balls that were done for warm-up fires in my yard. And I mean, here it is, like, the world truly is that small if you want it to be.
It is, isn't it? And I love that. And I love the notion of, doing, I mean, I have a large American customer base. So it has changed a little recently with tariffs. That has not helped
Yeah.
me at all,
Yeah.
sadly. But prior to the tariffs, we're talking 40% of my watches go to the US.
Wow.
So it's the narrative, I think, or at least the ideals that Schofield brand has and the products I make very much appeal to my American audience. And they see something there that's very different. And like you, are keen Anglophiles and love the Britishness and of all the other kind of thematics that go into the brand, and being British and enjoying the eccentricities of that is certainly what has shaped us.
Well, it's interesting. You talked about your origin story of this and how it came to be. And quite literally, I'm walking a similar path that I told you. We've reignited our interest and passion around watches, which is why we're having you on the show. But beyond that, one of my favorites that you have is already not attainable for me. So, your desire for a certain watch and all that, I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, I can't do that yet. But, that's just full circle. But yeah. Hey,
on that note, we do find that because everything is filtered by me as a designer with a particular taste and a palette and a style, that once you're in, right? Okay.
Right.
And so if you like one Schofield, there's going to be another that comes along that is equally exciting to you. And we see that time and time again. So fortunately with the brand, we have collectors that might be 20 watches deep.
Wow.
I mean, that's all different watches, limited editions, custom editions, watches with custom case backs, modified watches within reason. So yeah, we do. And it's been nearly 18 years now, which is why I say it's nearly 20, but 18 years or so, that's a long time. And those same customers were there getting the first watch, and then they fell in with the brand and could see it for what it really is. I always intended it to be okay to be into Schofield, right? You're allowed to be into my brand and collect the paperwork and the stickers and the envelopes, because I put as much design effort into those as I do a watch. Right. There's been times when a torch I've designed has taken longer than designing a watch, because I'll obsess over one detail or another, and it just goes on and on and on. And so I always meant that Schofield to be a sticky brand, one that you never really lose sight of. You're reminded of every week with my newsletter called The Six Pips, that's been going for nearly 600 editions now of that. And it's the only job. Yeah, I know. It's the only job I have to do every week, because everything else I can just come to work and just kind of feel out the day. But I have to do my newsletter, and that goes out on a Thursday night at 8:50 UK time. And I've been doing that for a very long time. Through thick and thin, through difficult times, through better times, I still do my newsletter. And
Listen, we're, two kindred spirits there. Our newsletter for our client base, we've been doing for 10 years, exactly. Every single Saturday morning between 8 and 10, we mix it up. So it rotates. Yeah. But for 10 years, we've only missed one Saturday in 10 years of doing that.
Good work.
And so we're I mean, that's right at that same number, 600. How about that?
Yeah, that's great. That's great. It shows dedication, I think, and hard work, and the value that you need to tell the story. My newsletter is not a hard sell. I mean, it contains poetry, right? And just pictures of Sussex and anything else that might interest me. And that's what it's about. That bing that the customers, or the readers, I should say, get at 8:15 is just a reminder. And they feel a kind of bereft if it doesn't arrive on time, or I make some kind of mistake. And I do miss them occasionally when I just feel I've got nothing to say, right? And that's the thing. The watch industry, it moves, and my industry particularly actually moves very slowly. And so finding things to talk about is quite demanding from time to time, but I do my best. And yeah. So that's tomorrow's job, is doing that.
No doubt. Well, I will make sure that we are signed up and get
Great
that
stuff.
going forward. Tell me, I always think this is interesting. Watches are very much in and around the luxury space. And so to you, what makes something truly luxury versus just being expensive?
Yeah. It's a very good question, interesting question. I think just being expensive is way less popular than people may think. And that's partly because the lack of transparency and the story being told on the product. So, for example, if you were to buy a Hermes scarf, okay, it comes with a heritage of a printing technique on a silk scarf that is centuries old. And you would not know this if you just go into a Hermes boutique and bought a scarf for £300-400, right? You'd only have to dig a bit deeper to find how and why and what the printing technique is for that. And so to somebody uneducated or uninterested in something as beautiful as a Hermes scarf, right, would just say it's expensive. And that's simply because they do not have the insight into what makes it expensive. And with those luxury high street brands, there is no doubt an extra markup for distribution and retail and returns and warranties and all of that kind of stuff that has to be amortized into the cost of the product, which you don't see with us so much. But nevertheless, it's a luxury item for that reason. And luxury items could be absolutely anything, as you well know, but it's the complexity of manufacturing. It's the complexity of QC, so the actual quality control. So, for example, we may make 100 watch styles, but only 70% would pass QC, for example. That's not a very it's not a very typical example, because we use dial manufacturers that do the QC for us. And so the dials we get through are 100% correct, but they haven't always been with other vendors in the past. Sure. And so this is true for everything within the luxury sector, because it has to be right. Otherwise, the consumer would reject it. And so that's the other thing. There is a rejection rate within the manufacturing process that means that there's a loss of items or recycling of items that naturally raises the per unit cost. And that's what we expect from any luxury item. The other is design. And there's design and design. Design is a powerful force in respect that it shapes cultures, ultimately. It's a very important thing. And too much design is left to non-designers in cheaper things. So whereas I specify every 1/10 of a millimeter of anything I'm having manufactured, I do not allow anybody to make a decision for me, right? I make all the decisions on all of my products. And I expect them to tell me if I've done something stupid and naive, so I can correct it. But that's my job. And so something that was within the luxury sector naturally has to have an allocation of cost to more considered design, right? And this is an area I know about because I'm a lecturer in design. So I'm an associate professor at Sussex University on design. And so I get to talk about design quite a lot, at least every week, which is great. And I think that it's a differential quality between luxury and non-luxury items is the design, and seeing the design through to manufacture and all of the quality control and the skilled work that goes into it.
So well said. And I categorically agree, right? Because it translates into our industry that, look, you can have a house that is built that is very plain and very generic and 4 big box squares, it can break up into 4 squares quite easily. And really, really good design really shows, and you can feel good design, and not just on the floor plan, but on the materials and the even more to the aesthetic and the way it appropriates as far as the natural light and all of those things. It absolutely great answer. I love that. That's Well said. What about maybe sharing an extraordinary piece of service or experience you've encountered or delivered, as part of your brand, or one that you've experienced personally? Doesn't have to be in the watch world, but I always like to hear that amazing experience of service and delivery.
Yeah, that's interesting. For me, customer service has always been something that I can compete on the world stage. And
Mm,
so when I look at all of the touch points within the business, I will give absolutely everything I do a satisfactory score. Okay. And that will be out of five, just out of 5 stars, is something satisfactory.
hmm
So if I'm making a box for a watch, is that satisfactory? If it's a 3, it absolutely has to be readdressed. Okay. Within the near short term. If it's a 4, then it's probably okay, but I might get round to modifying it at some stage. If it's a
hmm
5, then I've nailed it, right? If it's under a 3, then it cannot go out and it needs to be amended. And so I will give every single touch point and product and nuance within the brand a satisfactory score. It's a very
Mm,
powerful technique, and we use it in design as well because it means very quickly you can assess what needs to be addressed and add that back into your critical path before something's launched, right? Before a product
mhm.
reaches the market. But I believe very strongly that you design your business like you're designing a product. You apply
Mhm.
design thinking to your business as a whole. And I had the luxury, by accident actually, when I started Schofield, was that some movements, so the mechanical movements that we use from Switzerland to power the watches, from a particular manufacturer were delayed, and they delayed it by a year and a half. So I couldn't even start my business for a year and a half. So I
Wow.
got the opportunity, forcibly so, to work on all of the other aspects of the business, right? I could spend days now on packaging because I had to wait for the movements because the whole of
Right.
the watch was designed around the movement. So it's not something I could go to a different vendor and get a different movement. I was stuck. Actually, it was a very challenging time, as you can imagine. But it meant that I could work on the website, which meant that the website had no excuse to be as good as any of the top brands in the world,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it meant that I could work on my plan for customer service and make all the aspects of customer service satisfactory. 5
Mm,
out of 5, no excuses.
mm,
Because there are some areas that I cannot compete with Rolex, like advertising, but there is and getting celebrities and using influencers and paying for social media reach and all of that stuff I absolutely cannot get near. But what I can do is build a website as good as theirs,
mhm.
right? I can have a customer service situation that is better than theirs. I can do packaging and tools and accessories that are as good as theirs. And so if I can compete or be better than them, actually, in some aspects of my company, then there's some virtues that Schofield has that Rolex can't touch or any of
Mhm.
the other large high street bands. So for me, customer service was one of those things. Contrary to that, I had to understand where I was going to be on a sliding scale of a doormat, a pushover on one side, and a cold asshole on the far end of the scale, right?
Right.
And because Schofield is nearly mainly me, and I'm doing front of house and then dealing with warranties and I'll say returns, but in the history of Schofield, and this is not a word of a lie, I can count returns I've had on one hand,
Wow.
right? And there'll only be remorse purchases or it's too big for somebody. And that's very rare. 5, I think, in nearly 20 years I've had. So very lucky that what goes out stays out. And that's also why actually I have a very small secondhand market. There's not a lot of Schofields out there, considering how many I've made. I'm very
Right.
proud of that fact, actually.
Absolutely.
But with customer service, it meant that I had to position myself somewhere towards pushover doormat, just outside of the middle zone, right? So you take a middle stance between those two extremes, that meridian, and I'll be slightly kinder and more generous than would be reasonable. Right. And it meant that if you buy a strap and the strap isn't right for you, well, don't worry. I'm here. We're going to fix it because
Yeah.
it's my business making sure you're happy. And also the watch looks as cool as possible on your wrist for you. Right.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it's stuff like that that's always really important. Warranties, that's barely ever an issue for us as well, which is great. But if there's a problem, I'm here. You know where my shop is. Most people know where I live because I only live up the road, right? And when you phone me up, it's me that picks up the phone.
Right.
So I'm on hand to be the person that can help you get it right. And that's important to me. So I hope that answers your question, Alex, and
Definitely.
is something that works. Yeah.
No, it definitely does. And I think that plays into part of your story, right? Part of the origin story, part of the value, part of the thing that causes people to align with the brand is it's you, right? You're the designer, you're in the seat. That is a true testament and affirmation of aligning with you. And that's amazing. I align with that comment all the time. Like, it's me, it's mine, I get to decide,
That's right.
and we're a service industry, which is different, but it's also that gives us the power, as you said so well, to make it right when you need to. You don't ever want to do that. I'm very much like you. Like, I think there's very few people, probably 5 in my 25-year career, that are disappointed or frustrated or buyer's remorse in mine, knock on wood, that they don't pop up waiting for comments in this podcast. But if they do, we'll still make it right. But I always tell them, as soon as we start, I tell them where my house is, because you're going to look it up and everyone wants to know, so that we act accordingly, and that's really inspiring to hear, and adds to the alignment of the brand. I know of a peer that I don't know or have a relationship with, another independent English brand, that watchmaker, that their leading story when you lean into them is they have this really amazing dial in this particular watch, but the delivery and the experience and the customer service overwhelmingly shows up as soon as you begin to look into that brand. And that there's all these stories and reviews that they love it and that this is great, but my experience to get it and what happened and having an actual manufacturing issue is there. Will be
Oh, I
our
mean,
best.
I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. I mean, it's
No.
just a horrible, horrible experience for everybody on both ends, because I'm sure it's not the company's intention.
No.
Right? They want to do good, but quite often they don't put enough into the process of how to deal with those people, those customers, and how to give them time, because we're all so busy, right? And I feel very strongly in business, especially in the UK, we are encouraged to grow our businesses. That's the first thing you do when you start a business. Nothing else is as important as growth. Growth is the primary reason the business exists. And I wholeheartedly disagree with that, because it skews the reason of why you're in business for the first place. As a real bugbear of mine, a small independent watch brand is patronized, like mine, for being a lifestyle brand or for being a hobby brand. It's absolutely not. I give my business consistently 17-hour days and have done since it begun. You know, I work really, really hard at doing things right because I'm motivated by impressing people. I want to impress you in this podcast. I want to impress every customer with the watch. I want to impress people with my over-the-top tattoos that I've got everywhere, and my expensive boots. And I'm not flexing. It's not about being flash, right? It's just what motivates me.
Yeah.
And it's important because that carries over to every single element of my brand. I think the other thing here is that it's very easy for so many people to get it wrong because they are wholly focused on the opposite of what I'm saying, right? And for me, the key is to focus on efficiency. Efficiency first all the time. Because the dividend of efficiency is time, all right? So if I'm more efficient, then I have more time to either work on my business and grow it if I want to, or go home and spend some time with the family, or work on designing some packaging or a torch or a ribbon or a badge, or a sticker. Right. But that's because you factor in efficiency before growth. And that for me is the most important thing business owners can do, is work on efficiency and putting systems into place that yield time later on, that investment in your systems. And that's what I've done. And that's what I do every day. I mean, right now, today, You can see on my bench here, I'm playing with packaging solutions, and I'm really excited about it actually, because it's just some grease-proof paper, right? But for me, it's really important because it doubles up. It can come off, and then you can wrap a toilet roll in it. And so I'm designing it in such a way that it looks like apothecary and it looks
Yeah.
really cool as a Schofield toilet roll because I'm like, I want to double that up. I don't want it to throw it away. It can be on display, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
what better way than it wasn't intentionally going around a round canister. So there's some kind of familiarity of what goes inside. And I was like, they in the UK, they love this toilet paper called Who Gives a Crap with these decorative sheets around the outside. And I'm like, I can do that. Why don't I do that? So that's what I'm playing with today, and that's what efficiency gives me, that time to play and create something that's quite fun and a little bit tongue-in-cheek. Yeah, especially in such a serious business as this one, to have a little bit of fun with it.
Got to. You have to, right? Because it's quite serious. I mean, it could be even so serious that it can be daunting in the watch world, right? That it can be too big. So I love that, and I love we call that R&D in our practice, right? Which is not research and development; it's rip off and duplicate. When you've got the who gives a crap, and you're like, this is good. This is a good idea. Like we can do that. I understand that that mindset for sure. Two more questions as we come to a close here. This has been excellent, but do you see any major trends or any particular exciting things that you care to share about the industry and your brand in particular on the months ahead?
I think I'm liable to disappoint your listeners with my answer with that. I think, first of all, I pay very little attention to the watch industry
I love
because
that.
my relationship to watches is very different to the people that are buying the watches. Right.
Yeah.
So I carry a watch company on my back. It's a heavy load and I don't consume watches because I make watches for me. Right.
Right.
And so for some other watch to come along to really get me excited to say that's a piece of design that I could not have reached, I could not have got there. Right. I get like that when I see a Lamborghini. I look at it, right, and it takes my breath away because I know that as a designer, it's so far out of my remit. I could never have got there. I wouldn't know how to. And therefore, it really excites me. But within watches, very few do. Actually, even if I'm lucky enough to acquire them, I will generally sell them very quickly because I've done it, right? I've reached that, I've got the thing, and actually it's not as compelling as I thought it was going to be. So I move it on. The other reason I stay away from the watch industry is because I value naivety. And if I can do something where I'm not influenced by other trends and patterns within it, then that is a good thing because I hate being the same or similar as anybody else. Okay. I would, of course, much rather be a trendsetter. I'd rather be doing things that other people aspire to. Okay. So I don't look at that. The only thing I look at is within industry is to look at techniques of manufacturing and materials that are new. So I will see what burgeoning technologies are around by way of manufacturing and or parts technique, of which there are many that come and go, and some are adopted fashionably. So I will tread very cautiously around those because I don't want to be jumping on a bandwagon. And that's another reason why I move so slowly, because I am very cautious with that and very restrained actually in my design. I don't go hog wild all the time because then, of course, it would move into a trendy watch. And I like to have a classical register so that a Schofield watch will look just as relevant 10 years from now as it does now. And that's critical because they're investment pieces, right? They're expensive. Not for everybody, but certainly for some people, they're out of place. And they range from £2,000 to £10,000, depending on what I have and what's going on at the time. And actually, you've caught me in a funny flux period where I actually don't have very much. And that's because I'm waiting on new stuff, and it's all going to come at once, which is going to be overwhelming as I'm waiting for various suppliers to make stuff for me. And something where I'm very different to other watch companies is I don't use one supplier to make a watch for me. I don't just send my sketch off. One of my watches, for example, there's 30 different suppliers to get that to your door, including packaging and boxes. And those 30 different suppliers are what takes up most of my day, managing those, feeding back, making amendments, adjustments, going back again. That's what most of my day is for these projects, all these different suppliers.
So I'm going to go slightly off script because I'm on the site here. as we're looking, and I see your three major ones that have been out, or I guess four different ones, but only two main ones available at the moment. Anyone you want to highlight or share about your current inventory?
Yeah, okay. Actually, there's been another one that sold out in between these as well. That was earlier this year, and that hasn't even made it to the website because it's sold out, and so it becomes a low priority task to get that on the website
Right, for sure.
because it's only instantly a heritage item. And that watch sold out within about 6 hours.
Wow.
So that's unusual for me, to be honest. And that was about 4,500. So that's with VAT in the UK. So just under 4 for the US. Limited edition to 30 watches, and a bronze one that was with a mermaid on the back. And I collaborated with an American artist called Benjamin Guffey, who paints these wonderful seascapes. We collaborated on a watch together. He's a big fan. I'm a big fan of his work. And it was a brilliant collaboration, but it was over in a flash, because the watches sold so quickly. The watch on the website that's probably the most remarkable is, of course, the Obscura. And the Obscura is my most expensive offering. So that's 8,000 US, 10 in the UK with VAT. Limited again to 30 odd watches. And it has a Damascus steel case that's again made in the US in Vegas by a small forge there that make Damascus steel. And they made me some special steel for this watch, and then we bring it over, and then we have to machine it and do so much work to it, hence it being an expensive watch. But it's also very innovative by way of its language and the dial and the handset and the case back and the strap and buckle, etc. And the canister it comes in. An unusual watch, but certainly when I say my stuff is something, right, there's something there. The Obscura is everything, meaning there was nothing held back by way of cost, freedom of design, my desires at the time, my thing. I'm going through a massive sci-fi phase, and so I always have. And so it's difficult. Watches and sci-fi, they don't always marriage up, especially as my core theme is that of maritime and lighthouses, and marrying those up was tricky. But with this watch, I was like, I don't care. I'm making this watch because it's too cool, and that's what I did. And I'm actually continuing that with the next watch, which is called the Skeptico, and the Skeptico is one that you'll see in the next couple of months, hopefully all going well. So yeah, good fun.
Well, I'd be remiss if we didn't ask about, since we're talking about brands and the light and how it has it leaks to me like a bow tie, though I'm off brand, which is my brand. Is that accurate?
Okay.
That's on the
Yeah,
9?
no, that's absolutely accurate.
Okay, good.
One of the Schofield logos, the earliest Schofield logo, was an accident. It was a piece of design for a power reserve indicator, which is at the end that shows how much power is in the mainspring. So
Sure.
it is way over on the right when it's fully wound, and when it's powered down, it's way over on the left. And I needed an indicator to graphically indicate where you were on your power reserve.
Sure.
And I chose what was this double beam of light that we called it. That was our lighthouse beam of light logo, but it was squashed together to look like a bow tie. And that was a nod to the sartorial nature of my watches. I love clothing. I love fashion. I used to be in the fashion industry a bit as well. And I used to have this website, a blog, a fashion blog. I don't have it anymore. I actually, interestingly, don't have it anymore because I would see too much nice stuff and buy it. So I had to get rid of it because I just don't need any more clothes, right? So it was a nod to the sartorial nature of the watches as well, was this bow tie. And that was the logo. We used a truncated form on this other blog, fashion blog. And so that's definitely become the beam of light for the lighthouse, which is very much our theme. We're near the coast here. The sea and the coast, you see, was our domain. Other watch companies own other domains. You've got pilot's watches. They're in the sky, right? You've got Corum, which is yachting. You've even got golfing and chef's watches. You've got a lot of army and military watches. Under the sea, a huge domain of dive watches. Nobody had the coast. And so we were the only company. A few have come up since, but, have they copied me? I don't know. But we owned the coast and the British coast. That was our lovely interface between the sea and the land. And the lighthouse was a way of me articulating to you that was our geographical position, but also it's a trusted friend. It's a beacon of hope. It's
Mm,
an anachronism, right? It's a romantic kind of nod to the past. It's a testament to great engineering. It's reliable. And that's why we use the lighthouse and we use it still.
I love it. So good. Again, I saw it in my perspective, but I knew it was important. So all the reason to take the risk there.
Yeah,
And
well clocked.
so,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, two things in closing. We'll let you share who and how to be in touch with anyone that's listening and wants to know more. But our final question that we ask all of our guests is, in your book of life, what's your current chapter and what's it called?
I'm a very consistent person,
Mm.
boringly so. Even if I'm drunk, I don't vary. I'm exactly the same. And so I would say that when people ask, what do I want for the business the same as I had last year and the year before. There were 2 really good years with these watches. My quality of my product is getting better. I've reached a point with some of the suppliers where I've got nowhere else to go. I'm using the best in the world. My design and my crafting skills, my artisanal nature is, I feel, a real peak. And so I think the chapter now I would like to describe would be an artistic phase, because I'm just about to launch a new, my next product actually to come out in the next couple of weeks is an art project. And I've been doing more of that side of things where I bring the art and the engineering together by way of a demonstration to my students, actually, which was to show them that if they have graphic design and illustrative skills as well as engineering skills, then more power to you, right? You can do more with it. And if you can actually get that engineering out the door and get prototypes made, then the power is to you and you stop being a dreamer and you can be a maker and actually have something to hold in your hand, which is something I wholeheartedly encourage dreamers to do, right? Is to get outside of their comfort zone and go and actually see how they can go further up that pyramid of creativity, which has engineering at the very top and graphic design at the bottom. And the art and illustrative stuff comes in the middle. And I think that would be my phase at the moment, would be an artistic phase. The next 2 watches I'm actually signing, not with my name, but with my little peace logo that I use. It's like an alien peace face, like the
Yeah.
C&D logo. And so I'm signing it in a kind of abstract way as a nod to the artistic energy that I have put into my design work.
Wow. That's
Is that a
exciting.
good enough answer, Alex? I hope
It's
that's all right. Yeah.
you're doing not you're accomplishing your goal. You're wowing us,
Okay.
wowing the
Okay.
artist, and being your absolute best self, which is the craftsman, the artisan, and then the innovator and entrepreneur all in one.
Terrific.
It's inspiring, brother. Well done. So if people want to stay in touch, what are your favorite platforms? How do they join the newsletter? Share where you want people to connect and follow up with you.
Yeah, absolutely. The best way really is to sign up to our 6 Pips newsletter, and there should be links on the website. And in fact, if you're new, when you go to the website, there'll be a pop-up to sign up there. So exploit that and just wait for the newsletters to come through. And I hope, like most of our readers, it'll become one of the only viable, worth reading newsletters that you will get. We get a very low unsubscribe rate, thankfully, because the content is just a little slice of an eccentric English watch company. And it's that simple. It's called the 6 Pips. So go there. The website, Instagram, if you like, but I don't really do social media very well. I'm a little bit anti-social media,
Yeah.
actually. And so I don't overly post there, only because I have FOMO and feel I should, and I'm doing the business a disservice. Which is about once a month. So very poor on Instagram, but there is presence there. So certainly there's a history there worth looking at. And other places would be the blog that I have, which is called randomaccess.uk. So randomaccess.uk is my blog. Now that's a bit like a Pinterest board, which just kind of my vibe and what I'm into. And the website is schofieldwatchcompany.com, all spelt in full, schofieldwatchcompany.com.
We got it. There it is. Well, amazing. This is one of our favorites we've done. Of course, it's also right in my wheelhouse, as we discussed that, passions and watches are quite there, and we're walking similar paths. But we're so grateful for you being with us, and
Oh, it's a pleasure,
hopefully
Alex.
you
Yeah.
gain some followers, and we take that 40%. The Let's Talk Luxury community will take you from 40% to at least 45 in
Yeah,
the year ahead, Fro.
that'd be terrific.
Anything in
Absolutely love
closing
it.
you care to share, or
No, it's been an absolute pleasure. I really like your glasses, by the way. They're really
Yes,
cool.
thank you.
But no, it's an absolute pleasure, and I love just chatting about this, with people that are of a similar mindset. So that's the most important thing here, is that you get me and get what I'm up to, and likewise. So yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for being here, and we'll check back in with you in the next 12 months or so, see if we've increased that viewership.
Fantastic.
And
Yeah, maybe another chat then.
Thanks for tuning in to Let's Talk Luxury. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to follow, rate, and share this with someone you know that would like to know more about the finer things in luxury and how things are done differently. I'm Alex, and I'll catch you next time as we keep defining what luxury really means.